guys, I'm really excited about today's video because today we are going to be doing another installment of would I buy this palette again if I lost it? This was something that was started by Dolly Mama Beauty, and I will of course link her channel down below. But this video is actually also a collab with her because she reached out to me after I did my first one and she was like, hey, do you want to do another one? We can do it together. And I was like, of course, I would love to do that. That would be awesome. So if you guys are unfamiliar with her channel, she loves eyeshadow palettes. I almost want to say that she loves eyeshadow palettes more than I do, which is quite the statement, but she loves eyeshadow palettes. She loves talking about eyeshadow palettes. That is mostly what she does on her channel. So I know that you guys are going to love her. So please go ahead and check her out. She loves indie makeup. She loves colorful makeup, and she is just a joy to watch. She is such a sweetheart. So we're going to be doing this together. And if you are unfamiliar to this concept, basically this is something that she came up with to have another reason to talk about her eyeshadow palettes. And I'm so here for that. So this is just going to be a, if I lost these palettes, would I repurchase them? Like, would I miss these palettes? How do I really feel about these palettes now that I've had them for a while? These are all going to be quite older palettes. Maybe some of them are a little bit on the newer side, but I just randomly pick 10. That's basically how I do this. I just go over to my palettes and I'm like, boop, 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 you know? And it doesn't matter which ones I pick. I don't think about it too much. I just kind of pick. I try maybe not to pick like 5 from the same brand, but other than that, just random picks from my collection, and we're just going to talk about them. We're going to go through them and see if I would repurchase these palettes. And there might be some surprises in here. I'm not really sure. I haven't, like I said, I haven't really thought about these. So we're just gonna start on top. So first off, let's talk about this one. This is the Game Beauty Victory palette. They did send me this palette, and I think that first off, would I have bought this palette if they hadn't sent it to me? I think the answer to that would actually be yes, because I really like them as a brand. I don't love their formula per se, and their color stories haven't been like perfect for me yet, but this was probably the color story that they had come out with that I felt like I would like the most because it is the one that had the most depth. It's also probably the most neutral palette that they've come out with, but I felt like the colors in this were just stronger and more saturated than their other palettes that they first came out with. So I think I would have bought this palette if I wasn't sent it in PR. Now that I have it, would I repurchase it? That is a tough question because honestly, I really like the quality of this palette, but I feel like I have this over and over and over again. And even though the shimmers in here are really nice, the mattes in here are really nice, I just don't think that I would need this. You know, I could do the same exact looks with just other things in my collection and maybe formulas that I like a little bit better. So I don't think that this is special enough that I would buy it, but I really do enjoy the packaging of Game Beauty and I really like their concepts. I just feel like I'm just waiting for the time when their quality lives up to their packaging and their theme. You know what I mean? Like, I know some people really love their formula, but for me, I just felt like it's a little bit lackluster. It's almost there, but I feel like their shimmers has a little while to go, especially some of their later ones. I don't know. I don't really get along with them as well as some other people do, it seems like. Let's move on to this one. So this is the Gimmick Glow Bad Witch Club palette. This is probably one of the newest palettes that I picked up, but I thought it would be interesting to talk about just because it is more of a newer palette and it was a quite expensive palette. I did buy this myself. I really like Gimmick Glow as a brand. I think they have a really nice formula. But there is something about this color story that when I got it in my hands, I don't find myself wanting to use this, and I can't put my finger on why that is. I don't know if maybe it's the tones in here that I don't feel like go that well together. Maybe it's the fact that there are only 3 shimmers in this palette, and all of these 3 shimmers are quite dark compared to a lot of these mattes, which are quite light. And for me, I prefer to have darker mattes and lighter shimmers and not the other way around. And so I can't really come up with looks with this palette on its own that doesn't require me to pull in something else. And even though I am someone who really likes using 2 palettes or combining things together, I don't know. I don't find myself wanting to use this. I don't know what it is. It's hard to explain, but having had it now for a while and I've only used it twice, I think, I wouldn't repurchase this because it was an expensive palette and I don't think that I'm ever going to get my value's worth out of this because I just don't see myself really using it that often. So that's basically going to be that. I mean, I don't think it's a bad palette at all. I think it's just a color story that I thought I would really like and that I just don't end up liking, and I can't put my finger on why it is. I just don't. Let's move on. So this is the Shroud Cosmetics Arcana palette. Arcana or Arcana, I don't really know how to say that, but here's what the palette looks like if you haven't seen it. So this is a very, very dark and grungy palette, but at the same time, it's definitely has a punch to it. Like, these shimmers are beautiful. I do really like this palette, but I also don't feel like this is a standalone palette. I feel like for myself, I like grungy tones, but I like pairing them with more bright tones. I think that's something that I've realized, is that if a palette doesn't have like any bright tones at all and it's just these kind of murky grungy tones, I feel like something is missing. Like I always feel like I need something else, and there's also no light shimmers in this. So for me, it's not a standalone palette because I feel like I need to pull in other things to make the kind of looks that I like to wear. And I get that obviously this isn't maybe meant to make the kind of looks that I like to wear. And maybe I shouldn't have bought this palette in the first place, but I don't think I would repurchase this, but I do like it. I do think that the quality is nice, and I have reached for it quite a bit, but it's not a palette that I feel like I would really miss if I didn't have it. So probably wouldn't repurchase that one either. The next one here is probably one of the few palettes in this pile that I feel like I would repurchase. And I think the interesting thing about like doing these is that new makeup comes out all the time, and like as a review channel, I try a lot of makeup, and makeup just keeps getting better and better and better. And I feel like the older palettes just kind of end up not being as good as they once were. Like when I try something for the first time, like it might be amazing, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be amazing in 2 years, because other things have come out that have just been even better. So even though at the time it was an amazing palette, it just doesn't always stand a test of time, because so many things evolve and so many formulas get better that that's just kind of how it ends up. So the next palette here is from Kaleidos, and this is their Flower Punk palette. I think that this packaging is so cool, and I think this color story is so cool. This is not a palette that I've used as often as I would like. I think the color story is beautiful. I think the formula is beautiful. I would repurchase this, and honestly, one of the main reasons for me wanting to repurchase it is because of the packaging, because I feel like it's unique to my collection. It's not something that I've seen before. I think it is a really cool idea. And even though I know I said in my last video where I was ranking my palettes that the Rephr Beauty palette with the kind of coffin shape was annoying because it came in 2 pieces, but I don't find this to be as annoying because it's just a lot smaller, and it doesn't take up as much space. And these are actually like magnetic, so they kind of like, you know, you can just pop it on there and it's not like in the way. And it also has a really nice mirror that you can actually do your makeup in. And I don't know, I love how experimental Kaleidos is with their packaging. And I really like that not all of their collections are exactly the same. Like I feel like some brands, I love the fact that all of their stuff is like the same and you can stack them together and like everything sort of makes sense. But I also like when brands try different things with their packaging. And I feel like Kaleidos is one of the best brands with that. Woodside has been doing that with their palettes for quite some time as well. Even though they're still like, you know, square and basic shapes per se, but they still play around with the formats and the shape of their pans and like the, you know, just small little details, and I like that. So this is a palette that I would repurchase despite not really having used it that much, but I really do like it, and I'm very happy I have it in my collection. Next up is a palette that I was sent in PR from Glam Light, and this is the Wine palette. This was part of their Happy Hour collection, and I think that this palette is beautiful. Now, would I repurchase? I think the answer to that would probably be no, just because it is quite a monochromatic palette, and even though I really like this color story, I feel like I have this even from Glam Light and other palettes. I feel like one of the palettes from the Hershey Kisses collection, the kind of purpley one, has a lot of the same tones as this one does, and it's just like a very edited down version of this palette. So I don't think that I would repurchase just because I have these tones already, which can be said for all of the palettes, but I don't know. I don't really reach for monochromatic palettes, like you guys know, and the fact that I'm gonna keep going on and on and on and on about these, but the fact that I have my blendbunny palettes makes me feel like I don't need anything else ever again when it comes to matte. So like, I keep comparing all of my palettes to the blendbunny palette, and I'm like, do my blendbunny palettes have those colors in them? If so, I probably don't need this palette, and I probably wouldn't repurchase it. Let's move on. Let's talk about this one. So this is the At Foresight palette that Raw Beauty Christie did with ColourPop, and I think that this color story is stunning. Have I used this palette a lot? No, I think I've used it twice. I do think it's a beautiful palette. I think the quality is really nice from, you know, the looks that I've done. And I think that I would repurchase this just because of who it is a collab with. I really like her as a person. I really like her as a content creator. Do I like all of her baby content lately? No, but you know, I can give her a pass because she does put up other content as well that isn't just talking about her baby. So I would repurchase this. I think it's a beautiful palette. I think it's a really nice collaboration. I'm happy I have this in my collection, and I think that this is one of the best palettes, not only color story wise, but also formula wise, that Colourpop has ever done. I really enjoy this one. Next up, are you guys ready for some tea? Because I'm about to have a sip of my own tea, because this is going to be maybe a little bit controversial. I'm not really sure, but let's talk about this one. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier about just new things coming out that are better, and things that maybe you used to love, you don't love as much anymore because it's just hasn't stood the test of time, if you want to call it that. So this is the Impressionism palette from USA Beauty, and a lot of you are probably like, oh, like this used to be one of your favorite palettes. And I know, like, I still really, really enjoy this palette. I think it's a beautiful palette. I think the color story is really nice. I think the formula is really nice. It's just that, like I've said a couple of times before, this brand is now called Collab, so I'm just going to call them that. But Collab doesn't have my favorite shimmer formula. Now, they're nice, but they're a little bit too just muted and toned down, and like you can see what's on my eyes today. Like, they don't look bad by any means. Like, they're a basic shimmer that is easy to work with, that wears really well, that is, you know, kind of effortless, but that doesn't make me excited anymore. And I think that the one reason that I fell in love with this palette to begin with was because of their mattes, and I also felt like their shimmer formula kind of made sense with the way that the formula of the mattes were, but because there are so many shimmers in this palette, and like I said, I love the look that I did with this, and I'm sure if I used this tomorrow, I would love the look that I came up with, but I just don't get excited about this palette anymore because I have so many special shimmers in my collection that have come out from brands in the past couple of years that I just don't think that I would repurchase. I don't know. This is tough because I feel like this palette kind of has a special place in my heart. So maybe I'm a little bit emotionally attached to this, and maybe I would repurchase it for that reason. But strictly talking quality and strictly talking like use, would I use this if I lost it and then repurchase it? I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would. That's hard for me to say because like I said, I use this palette so much. I really enjoy this palette, and I still reach for it from time to time, but not really because of the shimmers. And like I said, I have these mattes from blendbunny now. I don't need this palette. I feel like I'm gonna be such a broken record by the end of the year. Like, all of you are gonna be like, so you like that blendbunny palette, huh? I do, I'm not gonna lie. Next up, this one is tough. So let's talk about this. This is the Glam Light Cake palette. I have such good memories with this palette. I've done so many looks with this palette. This was one of the palettes that really made me fall in love with Glam Light. I think maybe it's the palette that made me get on their PR list because I did a 3-look video with this, and I think that that's when they offered to send me PR after. I could be wrong, but I do really love this palette, and I do think if I lost this, even though I have all of these shades from blendbunny, I think that I would repurchase this because it is a beautiful palette. I love this color story. I really like the formula on this. I think that these shimmers here are beautiful. Like, Glam Light makes some really nice metallic shimmers, and the mattes in here are beautiful as well, super pigmented. I really like this for like bam in your face rainbow looks. I think it's just a stunning palette. So I actually would repurchase this even though I do have everything in here, you know, already, but that's what it's like when you have a big collection. You're gonna have duplicates of different things. But I definitely would repurchase that palette because I think it's really, really nice. Let's talk about this one. This one I got sent in PR, and this is the Killer Purr palette from Menagerie Cosmetics. You guys know I love Menagerie as a brand. I think that they have beautiful products. Their packaging is amazing. Now, this is quite a neutral palette, but it is a palette with a twist, and the tones in here are really nice for being neutrals. But just because it is such a neutral palette, I don't think that I would repurchase this. The completionist in me is like, you would definitely repurchase this. You're never going to get rid of anything from Menagerie, but God, I don't know. It's so hard. I love them as a brand. I love having everything that they've come out with. I have done a collab with them, and it's just, this brand is just special to me, and I don't know. I don't think I would repurchase this, because I know if I did, I wouldn't use it, and it would only be for sentimental reasons, so I don't think I would. It's so hard. It's so hard. I think this palette is beautiful, but I also really dislike the shimmers in here. I don't think that these are good shimmers at all. It's probably two of my least favorite shimmers that Menagerie has ever come out with. I feel like they're very thick and crumbly and just not easy to work with, and they're kind of like creamy at the same time, and it's not my favorite. They look very textured on the eyelids, which I'm not really opposed to having a little bit of texture in my shimmers, but this is not like a good kind of texture. This is the kind of texture that you can see from miles away. It's not really great. So we're going to talk about this last palette. So this is a palette that I got last year or 2 years ago, I think last year, but this is from Alien Cosmetics, which is now Unearthly Cosmetics. You guys know I love this brand, and this is actually one of my favorite palettes that they have ever done. This is the Lore palette, and man, did I fall in love with this brand because of this palette. This is incredible. It is such a good formula. I wish that they would start making more of these different shimmers, because this shimmer formula is so good, and I feel like the smaller palettes from Unearthly are just like, the shimmers are just not as hard pressed, and they're way easier to work with, and they're so beautiful. They remind me a lot of It Spells formula, and you guys know I love that. I don't know if they use the same factory or what, but the shimmer formula from those two brands are almost exactly the same. Same with Sugar Drizzle. They have very similar formulas as well, but honestly, I don't care where brands get their formulas from, especially indie brands. Like, I think as long as they are creative and they put thoughts into their product, and their products stand out on their own, I don't care where they get their shadows from. Honestly, if multiple brands get their shadows from the same place, I don't care, because to me it's more about the full experience, about, you know, the creativity that's gone into the collection and the palettes, and to me that is more important than, you know, them making their own shadows by hand or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter, and if they perform well, I'm here for it. So I think this is a beautiful palette. I would repurchase this in a heartbeat, and just looking at it now really makes me want to use it tomorrow. So maybe I will, maybe I won't have time. I probably won't have time because I have other things I need to film with, but this palette is beautiful, and right now it's on my mind and it makes me want to use it. So that is really all that matters. So those are going to be my 10 palettes. Clearly not that many that I would repurchase, and you guys know why. So, and of course, don't forget to check out Dolly Mama's Beauty's channel. I will, of course, link it down below. She's amazing. Thank you so much for collabing with me. This was so much fun. Let me know if you want me to keep doing this series. I do think it's really interesting to just talk about palettes in my collection and how I feel about them after having it for some time. You guys seem to really like the first video, so I'm probably going to keep doing these for at least a little bit until I've gotten through like the palettes that I feel like are maybe interesting to talk about that aren't super new. So that's going to be it for today. If you want to see some similar videos, maybe some ranking videos, I will put my playlist up there. And if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in my next one.